Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your consciousness transformation and ascension guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. I'm just finding myself on here so that I can pull up. Oh, I can see comments here today. Good. Well, I guess that's how we're going to do it. So last week I was talking about the trick to shifting, right? And I was talking about my own personal experience, about my realizations, and having to do with realizing that I had still been filtering and controlling the flow of the multiverse, of the consciousness within myself, right? And how I was guided to shift it and to share about how being guided to shift it to a place of allowing the flow and knowing that it was going to be, I don't want to say a learning curve, a remembrance curve, so that I could, so that we can remember how to function and exist differently without limitations and free of filtration and all that kind of stuff. So I said I was gonna report back, so I'm reporting back. I think last week when I spoke, it had been like the first week where I had been working on that or allowing that. and it was opening. If you haven't listened to last week's, then I would recommend you do. It's called The Trick to Shifting. Right now, I think it is, or something like that. Anyway, so I talked about the whole story and how I got to where I had gotten to this point and whatever. So I have remained in the focus of allowing myself to fully open again, to allow it all free of filtering and control and limitation, and to be able to transcend it and stay in observance to all of what's around me. And so it's been, it's funny is that I forget that I do that, and although I do that in meditation, and then I write it in my journal and whatever, and then I forget in all the other things that I'm doing or being, and then I realize, oh, well, there it is. So I realized, so like the thing that is important to talk about here is in realizing what we create, it's for us to start connecting all the dots of what we're experiencing and all of what we're doing, right? In the 3D and not in the 3D, in dreamland, in the car, in your conversations, in our interactions, in our meditations, in our self-care, in our bodies, and like what our bodies are presenting to us. So I don't know if I had talked about this last week. I don't know if this came up after. I had a day where, now here's the thing, I'm in good shape. I do martial arts. I walk every day. I do yoga. So I'm fully using my body regularly every day. To allow the energy to flow, which I do recommend for anybody. Good morning, Laurel. So I had a day where out of nowhere, and nothing particular was out of the ordinary. Like I didn't start something completely new in a way that I would have overexerted myself or whatever. But my body hurt. Very unusual for me because I don't have pain. Like I just, my body's fine. And I've made my agreement with my higher self that I don't need to have messages come up in my body anymore a long time ago so that I don't get sick or have injury and all that kind of stuff. And when I do, it's usually because I have ignored messages from my higher self repeatedly. And it's usually consciously where it's like, yeah, okay, I don't feel like looking at that. And then it still comes up anyway, right? And then it comes up some other way. So anyhow, so I had this one day, my whole body hurt. Was really weird. And I was like, well, this is really, and it wasn't that I was sick or anything like that. It was just that I felt like, and then so I went, and guidance was go take like a Epsom salt bath. So I did that. And good morning, Kathy. So I did that. And in the tub, I went into my meditation, and I was allowing, then I could see the habits of my cells, my physical cells, in allowing it to hold on to things, allowing me to hold on to things energetically and filtering that and holding on to stuff. And that would just, it felt like one big cloud of muck was like in my cells. And I was like, oh, well, look at that. That's with me now allowing, opening up, committing myself to allowing the full multiverse to flow through again, free of the filters of controlling, like filtering out, like, what I can hear or what I can see or whatever. Because now it's free of judgment. Now it's just observance and not taking it on. It's not my job to take on the other facets of me as the divine. It is my job to be this facet, right? While seeing the whole picture. So that's what I did. I sat and I literally, like I said, it was really odd, right? So it's obviously a very loud message to me. So I sat in the tub and I did the meditation, and then I allowed it all to flush out of my body. So I was like, yeah, I have, this isn't me, right? Or this is me, but it's the me that is outside of this body. So there's no need for this body. This body can be free of holding on any of those filters, of any of that muck, right? And this is stuff that was coming on. So think about it, 2 to 3 trillion cells in our physical body at any given time. And then you start holding on. If you start seeing the multiverse or remembering the multiverse full tilt, you can't, like, it's just such a huge amount of stuff that we would be letting flow through. And then we even subconsciously try to filter it out, right? And control it. So, and I saw that, and I saw how it made me think of, in a rock, in a river, and you have the rocks, and then, like, stuff collects behind the rocks, behind the current. So I was like, yeah, there's no need for that. That's a filter, right? That's separation and exclusion. So I just sort of let that flush out. And when I flushed all that out, I let it flush out with the tub, right? With the water in the tub and all that kind of stuff. And I immediately felt lighter. I felt better. The next morning when I woke up, I felt 1,000 times better and vibrant and had tons of energy. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Okay, so this is how we recognize what we're doing, in how it affects us in the 3D. The reason I'm guided to talk about this is because this is really important because so many of us do filter consciously to say, oh, well, I'm empathic, I can't take this on, blah, 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 like I was talking about last week. Go back and listen again if you haven't already. And so we talk about. No, I'll take it on. See, because here's the thing: even my cells were so habituated to doing that even when I consciously created the reality of that the whole multiverse can flow through me, unabated, like completely, free of filters. It's still the cells were like, oh no, but that's what we do. That's what we do. Right now, it's like, no, let it go. Because when we let it go, then it doesn't manifest in our bodies. As soon as I let it go, I let it flush out. It was like a breath of fresh air. So let me tell you that simultaneously, I've had multiple experiences like that over the past week and a half. And at the same time that I'm perceiving all this stuff, so where I've had the biggest challenge, has been in my sleep. Funny that I went to say that and I yawned. And because that's where we're most open, we put down a lot of our filters in our consciousness. And so for years, that's where those who passed over have come to visit me in the most seamless way. I have so many connections in consciousness in my sleep that are very vivid and clear. And I always just call it like in dream realities because they are just different parts of our reality. So I noticed, though, that I had like continuous dreams of like being aware of the consciousness of those who meant harm, those who were still very exclusionary, egocentric, those who were what many would consider evil, very dark stuff. And I would be seeing through, feeling through, experiencing with those pieces of consciousness. So at first, what does the ego want to do when you wake up from that? It's like, no, we got to filter that out. And it's like, no. Okay. So if I'm not to filter that out, what is there for me to see? It's for me to remember all of that is me. All of that is me and from the higher consciousness. That's We all have the shadow inside of us. I could talk about the shadow for, months. The shadow side, the shadow work is some of the most important part of us, is to come to that, to facing that. And I think that's what I was doing to myself until I finally, because at first the ego's like, oh my gosh, so I did this and I keep on having bad dreams. Well, it's like, well, it wasn't bad dreams. Not bad dreams. Dreams of conscious recognition of the shadow. And in seeing that in others of the consciousness of the facets here on earth, recognizing that is, I want to identify that as somebody else, to also say that that's me too, right? So then that was great. Fabulous. Actually, a fabulous lesson. So I found out that after, I don't know, probably several, maybe 3, 4, 5 nights of this in different ways, I finally had a dream where I had a whole bunch of them, facets in the shadow, come to me, my reality, which scares a lot, but I was guided very early to not be scared of it, right? So that was great training early on. Now I know from years ago what that training was about from guidance. And so all of these facets came to me, and it was almost like a SWAT team of darkness, right, that descended on my house in this dream. And the others in my household were really like panicked and whatever, and I just was like, no. And I would touch them and sort of embrace them in my energy, my family, those who live here. And as those entities, like, they were trying to break in, and I just was like, okay. So I opened the windows. I didn't even let them create resistance. I just was like, open the windows, come on in. And when they came in, what happened was, because of that acceptance, and there was no fear for me, I had encompassed the family to realize that fear, to realize there was no need for fear. They would just sort of dissipate as they came through the windows, which was beautiful, right? Because it was almost like an acceptance of, well, you're part of me too. Well, when I create that part of me, and this is something that's really important that many just overlook, and we can say it again and again and again, but it's until we really, good morning, Gloria, it's until we really recognize that and embrace that within ourselves, that's when we really come into our power, because then nothing has power over us. That's when we say, like I was saying, like this whole SWAT team of dark facets, right, dark entities. And I was like, come on in, join the party, you're me too. And in doing that, because the creation of the dark entities, creation of any darkness, however it's represented, is from resistance and exclusion and saying, you are not a part of me. Okay? And so you give it more power, the more you resist it. We give it more power, the more we define it as outside of ourselves, and definitely not who I am, right? So when you say, oh, okay, all right, well, why are you even coming in the windows? I'll come in the front door. And I know many who do the work that I do would be sort of horrified to say, wow, how could you even do that and just let them in the front door? And it's like, well, why not? They're me, they're you. Now it's time for us to come to resolution of that in the wholeness, and to say, okay, and so here's the thing. That's the thing to continuously remember within ourselves. Those things we fear, that's part of our shadow. And the more we fear them, the more they have power over us. The more we embrace them, the less power they become, and actually they typically dissolve and disappear because they are a part of who we are. And when we embrace that, there's no resistance, and the resistance and the exclusion is what creates the power of the manifestation of them. So that's sort of just disappears. So that's been shown to me in letting all of this multiverse in over and over again in the past week and a half. So that's my report on that. And it's been wonderful, right? Because even in the dream state, when I'm having those experiences, I'm like, why am I seeing all this? Why? I even question in my dream state, and when I first wake up, I'll be like, okay, well, I get it. It's for me to be different about it, right? And if I'm going to allow the flow of the entire multiverse through me in consciousness, then it's for me to let go of all my judgment of it, to be able to see it all so that I can access any part of it as is in fulfilling my purpose of this facet. So yeah, the words are challenging. So check into the energy of that, feel into the energy of that. And this is really the apex of what we've been talking about doing in our self-work for years. This is how we bring it together. This is how we connect the dots. So there's all that. What else? There was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh, and it was funny because even my husband, who, of course, is a reflection of me, and what he does and says is a reflection of me, like he snores, and he's been snoring, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. And so, he props his head up a certain way, he does breathing strips or whatever, which typically work, typically do a good job. Except, like, usually when there's something for me to see, that's when it sort of comes back in my face. So this is what happened this week for a couple of days. It has been like a freaking freight train at night. And then I get cranky because I can't, because I'm not sleeping deeply enough, and I keep on getting woken up. And so then, but here's the thing, I don't get cranky at him because he's a reflection to me, and I ask, so what am I so what am I doing? Why am I preventing myself from getting into that deep dream state by creating this loud noise that continuously interrupts my sleep state, my dream state right now? And that's when I look at, oh, well, I'm still filtering stuff out. There's still stuff I'm afraid of. There's still stuff I am resistant to. And so, and then I go into meditation. I realize, oh, there's still stuff I'm holding back, and there's still stuff that I'm filtering out and saying, no, I don't want to see this, or I don't want to, I don't want to be conscious of it, because it's such a deeply embedded habit for all of us to filter out, and we're not even conscious of doing it because we'll get into these the meat jackets, right? This part of our consciousness, and then we forget, because the whole purpose in the meat jacket is we put this layer of separation on us so that we can create this individual in this way. And so when we say, okay, well, now I'm going to go into consciousness, I'm going to forget all of that, and I'm going to still hold it, but I'm going to see through all the facade, we think that's hard. As soon as we think it's hard, we create it being hard. And then it's, overwhelming, it's challenging, it's like limiting, we're limited, I can only do so much. What's interesting is we perceive, so like what we've been talking about in my Monday podcast, Ascended World, with Sarah C. Gavagnoni for the last couple of weeks, is like last week we talked about, let's see, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Yeah, figuring out how to refocus amidst overwhelming details because of so much of the craziness and chaos that's going on in 3D, right? And then this week we talked about creating with the unexpected, which is great because it's sort of, so we did the figuring out how to refocus amidst the overwhelming details, and that was transcending, staying in this consciousness and whatever. And then from that came for me that recognition of shifting to a place of letting out all of the partitions of separation and filtering. And then this Monday we did the creating with the unexpected, because the unexpected is totally connected to ego, right? Expectations are always connected to ego, because it's like controlling how we imagine how it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to be created. So here's a box, here's the picture frame. And so then that was perfect, where this comes up. And then, of course, my husband with the snoring, and I couldn't sleep well, and then I was getting irritated. And then it's like, okay, so what am I still afraid of? What am I still anxious about or denying myself access to within me, so that I can just transcend and just access any of it from any part of, like, so when we get to that place, and it's challenging to explain in words, but then we create so effortlessly that it's seamless, right? That's the thing that our minds have a hard time fathoming. So creating with the unexpected is almost about creating free of expectations, because it's saying, okay, well, I'm creating, and I'm going to utilize the fluidity of an infinite amount of possibility by not putting that filter on, right? This is how we connect the dots. I'm doing that I'm learning, I'm remembering how to truly be the goddess I am, to be the divine consciousness I am. And so, so when we do, so like, and it sounds so, okay, this is like such a Cliff Note summary, if anybody knows remembers what Cliff Notes are. But this is something that's culminated after years and years of constant, like commitment to consciousness and self-work and whatever. So this is stuff that's coming for all of us, though, collectively. And the thing is, so many come to me and say, and I think this is why I've been guided to like talk about my personal experience in this, because I have so many who are coming to me and saying, I can't seem to get past this certain point in my consciousness, or I'm cycling back to the same thing over and over again. And I can't, like, I'll go to a certain point and then I hit a brick wall, and then I'll cycle back around and I get to a certain point and I feel like I'm progressing, and then I hit a brick wall again. And it's all good. The thing I always say is, when we hit that brick wall, so what is it I'm still resisting within myself? Because otherwise I wouldn't create that brick wall for me. It's taking that full responsibility for the creation of our reality. And this is all incorporated because as divine consciousness, we create all of it, the shadow and the light and everything in between. And the experience of the fear and the anxiety and the anger and all that kind of stuff. And the separation, levels of separation. And so it was funny, I had somebody come into me for a session sometime, I think it was the past week or so. And we were talking, and this individual was like, well, you know, this was just, this whole earth experience has been a joke. And I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, it can be a joke. We can laugh at all we want. And she was like, well, you know, I would like to get my hands on the person who screwed up the plan. And I said, that's you. There's no plan that got screwed up. This is the way we created it. And we created all of the wild cards, all of the joker cards, because we wanted to try every possible option. So therefore we could. We have this great multiverse of infinite timelines and playing out things, and they're all coming back together. That's been a funny thing, too, that I've noticed in taking out even more filters in the past week, is that I've had moments where I've gotten so thoroughly confused about something because I know a moment ago this was here in my reality and now it isn't, or vice versa. And it's like, and then everybody only remembers this one moment, and I'm like, no, but there was this. It's been really funny, like funny, and I laugh. I don't even get upset about it, because all I'm getting at is that we're constantly, because all this stuff is tying together as we take out the resistance and partitions between them, and so you have shadows that are constantly flickering in and out, timelines and parallel, parallel decisions in timelines, flickering in and out. So you have one thing here. I'll give you a great example. This was hysterical. So both my kids' birthdays were Sunday and Tuesday, and 24 and 22. And so my oldest wanted to get roller skate, like roller derby roller skates, like from the 80s. That totally took me back to being 16 years old. And so we got her the roller derby skates, and I got her, of course, the safety pads. And I know I opened the box that had all the safety pads, the wrist braces, the elbow pads, the knee pads. I know I opened that box, and I went through everything in the box to look at them, because I remember holding them in my hands. I know when I first opened that box, there was not a helmet in that box. I know it. I took it all out, looked at it all, put it all back in. A couple days before her birthday, I said to my husband, we should go and just get her a helmet too for the skating. And we went to like 3 different stores, and I was like, I just want to get her a plain black helmet. This is just hysterical. I just would like her to have a plain black helmet, because the pads are all black, whatever. Nothing crazy. Of course there were the kids ones. She's 24 though, with the big mohawk thing, which we thought would be funny. But we went to like Dick's Sporting Goods and several other stores that would have the sporting stuff, and everybody's wiped out of bike stuff, like because of what many people have been biking again, which is great. Could not find one plain black helmet, so I was like, oh, forget it. When after she opens everything, we'll be like, okay, if you want a helmet, we'll go get you. We'll find a helmet, or we'll order it online or something like that. So her birthday comes, she opens them up, and opens the box. So she opens her skates, whatever. She opens the box with all the pads, and there's a helmet. a black helmet in there. And my husband looks at me like sideways, like this very puzzled look. And I'm like, I know it wasn't there. But this is the stuff that's happening. There's so many, like, if you haven't ever looked up the Mandela effect or haven't heard of it, go and look it up. That's happening to us in our everyday lives right now all the time because of these timelines and stuff that are coming together. So I hear more people than ever before saying, oh, I'm getting senile, something's wrong with me, I can't focus because I could have sworn this, and I think I'm crazy, and da da da. And I'm like, no, it's just accepting the unexpected, right? Because I just looked at the thing, like I looked at my daughter, I looked at my husband, I went like this, and I started laughing, and I'm like, okay, apparently that's why we couldn't find a black helmet anywhere, because I already had one. And the universe is like, oh, higher self is like, why are you wasting time in the physical sense to do this? We already have it, even if you don't see it present in the box, which is, it's so like, and it's not like an oversight. I literally took everything out of the box. So it is what it is. And so that's like creating with the unexpected. That's like accepting it and laughing and saying, oh, this can be fun. This can be truly, existing as the divine consciousness or as God, Goddess, however you want to put it, right? As source, to say, okay, so there's infinite possibilities. For there to be infinite possibilities is for us to allow the infinite multiverse. When we say, I will only allow things to come through this way, right? Then we're limiting and we're controlling and we're putting energy to something that's perpetuating separation and exclusion. So that's what has been coming really into my consciousness a lot since I started focusing on these in these areas. And see, this is how these dots connect. I will tell you that once I open those gates, now I know I still haven't opened them all the way. I still am asking, or not asking, I'm still creating in my meditations and self-work every day that I am freeing myself of all the partitions of the multiverse and all my filters and all of my exclusions to allow it to all flow through me freely in a place of transcendence where I can observe without taking on stuff that is not meant to be this meat jacket partition or facet of my wholeness. And then the wording changes because, we believe we put power to words, and then it's like, okay, well, then I just go out there and see the meaning and then it's fine. So it's a constant shifting, still constant shifting. And I'm sure there's going to be so much more that even comes from this. And of course, I'm going out to the wild wilderness of Mount Shasta, the sacred site of Mount Shasta, in a week and a half. I'll be there for 11 days. So I know that's leading up to whatever the awesomeness will be there, because it always is awesome there. So this is the thing for all of us right now, is to look at what we're still filtering and what we're still not allowing or creating with expectation, or, only, like saying I can't control this, being afraid of control. Because I ask myself, why have I still not opened the gates 100%? And my answer is immediately because I'm afraid of losing control. I'm afraid of losing myself. And all of that is ego, right? So then I'm like, okay, well, the ego can maintain itself. What if we say the ego can maintain itself? And how about we shift our expectations to free ourselves of expectations of what control actually is? That the only true recognition of infinite ability to create is to free ourselves from the idea of controlling in the ego sense. So that's for you to chew on a little bit. Gloria, you said name of that effect. Well, what is that? What was that a question? Or I don't know. I just spewed a whole bunch of stuff that came through. So if you want to explain, that's great. So there's so much that for us to look at. So here's the thing. This week, look at where you are still afraid of yourself. And when I say that, meaning, are you still afraid of your darkness? Are you still afraid of the darkness of others? Are you still judging the darkness of others or the limitations of others? Are you judging it all? That's all stuff within that reflects back to us. And this is how it all connects the dots, right? And for us to say, I am to accept that I am the infinite divine consciousness embodied in this facet, it's for me to accept all of it. There's nothing that's not of it. And so, like, to talk about that client of mine who was like, oh, well, I like to get my hands on the person who screwed up this project, or, was the wild card. I'm like, well, that's you, that's me, that's us, because we are the creators, and there's nothing that was out of scope or is out of scope because we've created all the possibilities. And we're just sort of looking at the playing out of all of them, which then the mind starts getting overwhelmed with, because again, it wants to control and filter. But then it's like, well, okay, but when we know that, then it flows through so much more easily. And then we know each moment, it's almost like we can pluck a chord, or it's almost like plucking a string on a harp is what I'm seeing. And you get this note that's perfect, that if it was covered or dampened, it wouldn't be the perfect, full embodiment of the note that we all created ourselves to be within this symphony of the multiverse at this moment. So, baby steps. The thing for everyone is to look at in this week. Oh my God, there's all these comments that I didn't even see. Oh, Mandela effect. Sorry. I just saw all the comments. Thank you, Sarah. The Mandela effect. I didn't see that. I scrolled, the comments went down beneath the bottom, and so I didn't see the comments underneath it. Okay, yeah. The Mandela effect. Because the Mandela effect is, like, they call it that because there's a whole bunch of the population who believe they remember Nelson Mandela to die in jail years ago. And then there's a whole bunch of the population that knows of him, like only knows of him, like getting out of jail at a certain date and living past that. And so it's like there's all these things that there's a portion of the population that could swear that things were this way, and there's a portion of the population that could swear things are differently, that were different slightly, even like a letter, or like I think the Berenstain Bears, which are the kids' books, like people argue about that. That used to be Berenstain, it's Berenstain, like all that kind of stuff. So that's really interesting. But that's happening all the time as we're allowing these things to come together, because there is no when we take away the exclusion, it's like, okay, and this happened, so that happened, and that happened. And that's for our minds to wrap around. So yeah, look up the Mandela effect. Look at the things in your life that you could have sworn happened one way, but happened in but have somebody who was with you swear it another way. And it's not that either one of you is wrong. It's that the acceptance that both of you are right. Both of you are correct, because both of those instances can exist even as differently as they could seem. So, baby steps, and play with that. And say, okay, well, if this is so different, what if they both existed simultaneously? Then what's the holograph for me to see? Completely, like, that's oh God, that just gave me a really big zing. So that was something that's important to look at, is as we accept the different perspectives, and even within ourselves of, oh, I remember this happening, and I remember this happening, or I remember this happening, and then this happened, and they don't collide, or they don't coincide in the mental aspect of logic. And what if they do both happen, or both exist? Ooh, that felt really good. Wow, that's just to even something freed up there. But when we start to say that and accept that more, then we can simply be in this place of infinite freedom, regardless of all of the options, all of the limitations, all of what's being presented around us. So, thank you for joining me. I think that's enough for today. Let everybody sit on that. That's a lot of stuff. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next week. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Bye.